couple of years ago, and was able to shoot with him and have traveled with him a couple of times. And I didn't realize that, people in Alabama know other people, you're such a completely knit group. So Keith Bozeman is somebody I do not know, but I had started following on Instagram. And in my mind, I'm like, I should introduce you to John Sharp. So I spent a lot of time on Instagram. And in February, I was standing on the edge of a cliff taking pictures of rock climbers, and Marilyn and Keith are there taking their selfies. And so I just kind of quickly met them and said, "Hey, do you know John Sharp?" And she said, "Oh my God, how do you know John Sharp?" So the world is very small. So when we went into shelter in March 24th, I think, here in Austin, I decided to host Zoom meetings. And at first it became, well, anybody can come and talk. And I've kind of turned it into a photography driven kind of a people come do a presentation, and I have an audience that is allowed is able to do questions and answers, and we do that Wednesday night. We've done it every Wednesday night since April 1st. So I do have a YouTube channel. It's under my name, which is Linda Nichols Happiness Hour, and that's a dumb name, but it got tagged as that, and we've kind of stuck with it. But I have invited a lot of people to come and share what they know. Very generous. And I wrote Keith Bozeman into doing a presentation, and I've got John Sharp etched in somewhere, but he's hard to tie down, but I'm gonna get him. So that's who I am. And Marilyn had mentioned that Keith was doing the presentation tonight, and I'm like, can I come? And so here I am. So thank y'all for being generous and letting me jump in.
Well,
Oh,
we welcome
absolutely.
both of y'all. Thank y'all for joining us.
Yeah.
And it's good to see the usual faces, Mike McGarry and everybody. So what I'm going to ask now is we're going to do it as our standard format. We're going to mute our phones and turn off our cameras. And I'm going to turn it over to Keith. And you can write your or type your questions in, and I'll kind of moderate those and jump in, and we'll make sure that Keith gets those questions and answers. Okay, so if y'all do that right now, we'll go ahead and start. So Keith, do you want to go ahead and take over the presentation under screen, share screen? You should be able to change it over.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, this little bar is in the way. There we go. Well, I appreciate Tina, you asking me to come, and the Trustful Photography Club for inviting me to come. It's truly an honor to be able to speak to you all. And I hope the things that I say tonight will bring some inspiration to you, that maybe you'll be able to pick up on something that you hadn't learned before. Certainly, I don't claim to know everything, and I'm learning all the time new things. There's just talking to people and watching videos, and I mean, you just pick up all kinds of things, of the amount of resources that are out there. But I hope that I can present something, at least, give you an idea of who I am and the things that are going on. But again, I appreciate you asking me to do this. If you asked me 10 years ago if I would be doing this kind of thing, especially on Zoom, I wouldn't believe it. But because one thing, I don't think I do anything that's absolutely remarkable. There's so many absolutely phenomenal photographers out there, but I do have fun with it, and I do have a passion for nature. I have a passion for photography. I mean, I always feel like that, if you got to have passion for whatever you do to be good at whatever you do. And so I have passion for what I do. I have to do something with passion if I'm going to do it most of the time. Like I said, I don't think I do anything remarkable, but I do use my talents that God's blessed me with, and in hopes some people will appreciate it. And obviously, I do have people who appreciate it. And I thank you for being a follower And so anyways, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I started photography back around 2002. My middle child was born, named Rebecca. And back at that time, the cameras were coming down in price. And so I bought my first camera. It was an Olympus C2000Z. And it was a little point and shoot camera, but it took really good pictures. And of course, bought that so I could take pictures of our children. And so I started taking this thing out hiking with me. Because I mean, I would have probably never got into photography, probably, if we were still doing film, because there was a lot of, expense in developing film and those kind of things. But that ability to be able to shoot and review is quite powerful. And so because of that, I am a science teacher, and I just trial and error. That's what science is all about, is trial and error and learning. And so I just got better and better at it. And I started publishing. I got a couple of images published just from that camera. Got some pictures published that I took in Bankhead. And so I started getting a little bit more serious. And we had bought a house here in Hartselle, where we are now. And our real estate agent had seen one of my pictures. She said, "Boy, you take good pictures." She said, "Do you know who Charles Seafried is?" And I said, "Well, I do. I know who he is, because years before, we had been hiking in Bankhead for a long time, and there's a little store down outside the forest named Wild Alabama. And I used to see his pictures in there all the time. He's a world famous, at least in his time, world famous panoramic photographer. And he also photographed the President of the United States. He still does photography. He's retired, but he still does some, I think. And just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal photography. And she said, "Would you like to meet him?" I was like, "Well, yeah, that'd be cool." So she gave me his number, and she talked to him, and I called him up, and he eventually just invited me over. He said, "Bring, your 20 best pictures, and we'll just kind of look over that." And so he looked at my pictures, and as we were going out and finishing our discussion, he said, "Keith," he said, "this is what I usually tell people. I tell people either," because people are always asking him about their photography, and he said, "I either tell people to become insurance salesmen or be a photographer." And he said, he said, "I think you need to be a photographer." But he said, "Don't quit your day job." And of course, I still haven't quit my day job. But that was truly an inspiration to me, and I've seen him since then, and he's quite a mentor for me. I did a talk at the Huntsville Photographic Society not too long ago, and I guess it was back in February. That kind of was a long time ago, and he was there. He even came, which was it really made me feel good. And so, I still have that passion I did back then. I go out, I'm an explorer. I love to go to places where you won't see people for a week. And yes, there are places like that in Alabama, but you really have to hunt because of Instagram and Facebook and people posting locations. But still there are places. And so I'm always on the search for a new place. So I've got my topographic map out, my GPS, and I'm looking for new places where I think there might be good waterfalls or beautiful canyons. And so I spend a lot of time in Bankhead, number one, because it's an hour away. It's not far from me. So I have a lot of stuff there. And I'm going to talk about that, how that, one of the ways to get better light is just to have a plan around you locally. And so that makes a big difference. We don't have to go shoot at a national park to get good light. You can shoot around locally. A lot of my best pictures are just taken locally. And so I'll show you some of those tonight. I've also got into caving the last year or so. Like I said, I'm an explorer and got into caving. And so you'll see some cave pictures that I've posted. And there's another one I want to go to pretty soon. So you'll probably see some of those posted within the next few months when I get to visit it. And but the whole point, getting to what I'm going to talk about tonight, we have really busy schedules. I mean, I know I do. I have a busy schedule just like you do. And it's getting so busy that, you can't just go, "I'm going to go shoot tonight." When we do that, when we just go, "I'm going to shoot tonight," and you're kind of just leaving it up to fate to hope that you get good light. And so you could go out many times and not get good light. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to present to you my methods, because say, for example, if I'm gonna go on a vacation, I plan my vacation. I plan around the light, where what I think would where I'm going to increase my chances for the best light. And so I have a detailed plan before I ever start. And I'll talk about that in some of my with my images. And so at least I know when I go out, most of the time I'll come away with some kind of shot that's a good quality shot for the most part. I mean, there may be a few times where things fizzle out, but a lot of times I usually come away with some pretty good stuff. And again, it's all because it's purposeful planning. And I'm going to show you some of the things I do. Some of it you may be familiar with, some of you may not. But hopefully, like I said, maybe you'll be able to pick up something with that. So I want to start tonight. Let me go ahead and present here. I'm going to start tonight with just starting off with one that is not like the best of the best quality. Everybody, most of you are familiar with being in Alabama, you're familiar with the Cahaba lilies. And this was this particular, when I took this image, this was the first time that I'd ever seen the Cahaba lilies. And at this time, I don't think I ever really investigated when the sun was going to go down. I didn't know much about the lilies. We went at the weekend of the Cahaba Lily Festival, which I strongly I do not encourage you to do, because there's tons of people there, and you want to be there's times where you can go where you can just be by yourself. Like I said, the Lily Festival is not exactly the best time to go if you're going to be doing photography, serious photography. But this is an example of, it's an okay image. It's got, good detail. It's, like I said, it's got pretty good composition, but what's missing in this image is good light. We don't have really good clouds. We don't have good color. It's just kind of almost a blue sky. It was a blue sky day. I mean, technically, as far as, sharpness and that kind of thing, this was actually back before CS4. I had CS3, and so I hand blend focus stacked this. Focus stacked this and hand blended it. And but I still, even with this evening, I came away some pretty decent images and had some memorable experiences in the process. After I got through shooting this scene, I was walking down the trail back to my car, and I came across this little rattlesnake. And I say it's little. It was sitting right smack in the middle of the trail, and it was probably about 1.5 feet long. It was young. You couldn't even hear it rattle. It was so young, and but it's the prettiest rattlesnake that I've ever come across. And so I did walk away with a good quality shot. Of course, I shot this with a 70-200 lens. Didn't get close to it. I kept my distance. I mean, I've dealt with snakes enough just from being a biologist, and I've had personal snakes in my classroom and things like that I know their behaviors. And so anyway, so I at least walked away with a good image just from that standpoint. So even any trip I take, I at least plan to where I hopefully will walk away with some kind of good images. Okay, so what I decided to do, I love these. I had an interesting experience too. Another thing that happened this particular day, the water levels were up. And usually the water levels would be right at the base of these plants, but the water flow was pretty strong, and I had to wade out of course, you have to go out in the middle of the river. And on my way back, I had to be very careful because the current could have taken you out. And so on the way back to the shore, my foot went out from under me. And I went going down the Cahaba River for several feet. And fortunately, I have a backpack, and I still use the same kind today. It's called a Low Pro Dry Zone Rogue. No, it's not a Rogue. Anyway, it's a Low Pro Dry Zone, and it has Rover. That's what it is. And it has a storage compartment on top stuff where you can put stuff in. And then it also has a completely waterproof section. Okay, and it helped me float down the stream, and I was able to get out. So just an interesting experience. So I wanted to see these again. I wasn't happy with this. So a week later, I went back, and this is what I got. This probably is one of my best-selling images I have other images now that are kind of competing with that. But this was probably, for years, this was one of my best-selling images. I mean, I've got a picture of this one in the Auburn University's Museum of Natural History, a big canvas print of this. I think it's a 36-inch print. And, but, you know, I planned this image. And I'm going to take you through some of the things that I use in planning. And some of it you may be familiar with and some you may not, okay? One of the apps that I use quite a bit is I use an app called Photographer's Ephemeris. I think the main app that a lot of people use now is PhotoPills, and I use PhotoPills too. But Photographer's Ephemeris is it's a web-based app. I mean, you can use, whereas PhotoPills is a phone-based app. Photographer's Ephemeris, you can access it on your desktop or your phone, and it's a little bit more simple. It doesn't have as much stuff in it, but yet it's very powerful software, and I'll show you how this works. So let's just I'm going to take you to my Photographer's Ephemeris where this was taken, I think, July the 11th. And so I went to this largest stand of the Cabo lilies is the Hargrove Shoals. And so this was the Photographer's Ephemeris will show you the sunrise time, where the sunrise is going to come up, where the sunset's going to happen. You can expand it out. Let's see here. Nope, that's not what I want. You can expand it out to where it tells you the sunrise and sunset times, the moonset times. It has all kinds of powerful things, and a lot of these things I don't even use. But here you can see, and just judging from the image, you can see that's where the sunrise was over here. And the best time, I found out that the best time to shoot the Cahaba lilies, sorry, this thing is in the way. Can't get to I guess I can move this. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I can move it. The best time to visit them is actually in the morning, because they start to die, they wither, they're temperature sensitive, and they wither in the evening. So that's something or wilt in the evening, and that's something I learned. But I use Photographer's Ephemeris to know where this position's going to be, okay? And so that's one of the things that I use, but I'm going to show you another powerful use of it as well. Another thing that I use is NOAA weather. You know, like I said, I don't just jump in my car and go down and I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the Cabo lilies today. No, sometimes I might wait 2 to 3 years for the right conditions. And one of the things I look for is I'm looking at weather, because, you know, as a photographer, and I remember, you know, Mr. Seafried saying it's all about the light. You got to study weather and you got to know about the light. And that's true. And I use NOAA's website a whole lot. So I'm just going to take you there and show you what I do and my methodology for predicting sunrise and sunsets, and if they're going to be any good or not. I would say probably 60 to 70% of the time I can predict them pretty accurately by what I do. Okay. There are apps out there. I think I've got an app. It's called like Alpine or something on my phone. And I just don't have much faith in that app. So I just kind of go with my gut instinct, how I've always done it. And so let me show you how I gauge whether it's going to be a good sunrise or a good sunset. Okay. Because on this day when I shot this image, I was studying the weather well before I took the image. So this is what I do to base my guesses, my predictions. Okay, first of all, my number one thing that I use is cloud cover, okay, sky cover. If it's between 40 to 60% sky cover at sunrise or sunset, I'm gonna be there, okay? There is a good chance that you're gonna get some kind of decent light. You may not get spectacular light, but between 40 to 60%, you will usually get pretty decent light. Around 80%, I may go, I may not, but that's when you're going to get, because that's around like stormy type. I mean, you're going to get some pretty spectacular light at that. But 40 to 60%, I mean, I'm always shooting for that pretty good. I mean, that's usually what I'm doing. So that's the one thing I really gauge a lot on is sky cover, 40 to 60%. Another thing I look at is humidity, relative humidity. And typically that's going to be in the mornings. When you want these moody images with fog, You want to have, if you want good foggy images, you want to have the humidity up around 100%. And usually your wind doesn't need to be more than between 1 to 2 miles per hour. And so that helps to blow the moisture around. And so you get this fog. You kind of have got to have those conditions. Another thing that you look at, and really the big thing, is where the temperature and the dew point are within like 1 or 2 degrees of one another. So when you get the dew point and the temperature between 1 to 2 degrees of one another, and then you have around 95 to 100% humidity, and then you have about 60% chance of cloud cover, you better believe I'm going to be at that place, because you're going to have some amazing light. But also, like on a good clear day, so if I have 10% sky cover, but I have 100% to 95 to 100% humidity with, again, just maybe 1 to 2 mile per hour wind, that's going to be a good chance that you get light beams. Sometimes we call them the God beams. And so I use that as well. So I have places planned around where I live that I know where I can get good compositions with great light. And it's just every time I can get that and not have to drive a long ways. So I have places around locally that I'll talk about later on, but I use NOAA's website pretty regularly. And again, feel free to buzz in if you have a particular question about something to ask as we go, then I'll feel free to ask. Another very important app that I use, especially in Alabama, because we are blessed with waterfalls. You know, I heard one person, I guess I was reading on the web one time, somebody said that waterfalls are cliche. You know, they're just kind of boring, you know, whatever. Well, they don't go to the waterfalls I go to. That's all there's to it. Alabama is blessed with tons of beautiful waterfalls. And like I said, the Bankhead, Sipsey area where I do a lot of hiking, I mean, during the wintertime, it's like around every corner if we've had good rains. And so I use a great site, and this may be something that a lot of you aren't familiar with. If I want to go shoot waterfalls, I don't just go, well, I'm gonna go down to Bankhead and shoot waterfalls today. I don't do that. What I do is I use a website called Alabama Whitewater. And so Alabama Whitewater is run by it is a major site that keeps, which I just hit the wrong thing, I think. Let me go back here. Flow page. I want to click on the flow page. If you click on the flow page, it has all the major rivers in Alabama on here. And it has the water levels. And so we've had a lot of rain lately. So you can see too low is red, low is yellow, good is green, and blue is high. So if I want to go shoot waterfalls, say at Little River Canyon, or if I want to go shoot waterfalls in Bankhead, I'm going to want to go when the water levels are good or high. Okay, so let's check it out. Let's see, if I want to go to Sipsey tomorrow, you better believe those waterfalls are going to be flowing like crazy. It's high. The Sipsey is high. So if the Sipsey's high, that means the waterfalls that are feeding it is high, okay? And that's true also of Little River Canyon. We can see Johnny's Creek feeds Little River Canyon. So it's pretty low right now, but here's Little River Canyon right here. And you can see it's at high levels too. So that is, I mean, if I want to go shoot the big Little River Falls, that's definitely where I want to go. Okay, and you can go on this site and you can click on the actual where the marker is, and you can see what the water levels are. It tells you what the average is, like the mean level, and then it tells you your most instantaneous level. So its mean at this time of the year 48, but here it's at 848 cubic feet per second. So what does that tell me? That tells me I can get beautiful fall colors right now in Bankhead, which sometimes you don't get. So it's and also Little River Canyon. So I use this website a whole lot to make predictions. Again, I'm not gonna go down to, if I wanna shoot water and fall colors in Bankhead, I'm not gonna go when the mean is 48. Okay, it's just, I'm not gonna do it. I'd be wasting my time. But this is a very unique time, and you gotta look for those unique times. And so you maximize, when you look at this data, you maximize your chances of getting good images, okay? So in this case, I not only researched the sunrise, where the sun was going to be, I researched cloud cover, I researched humidity and all of that. I also, in dew point, I also researched Alabama whitewater. So when I got down there, all of these kids, I had good chances of having a good sunrise, and that's what I got. And it wasn't guesswork. It was certainly, it was not by guessing, it was by, planning. Okay, here's another one. And of course, this was taken years ago. I think this was taken in 2010, somewhere around there. So you can see how and I shot this with a graduated neutral density filter. I was still doing that kind of stuff back then. And I mean, I don't ever use them anymore. I know some people still do, but I pretty much just bracket my shots and blend them together in Photoshop by a luminosity mask. But see, you can see the vast difference between then and now in my photography. So it's grown quite a bit, and that's the thing. Our photography grows over time the more we work on it. And I shoot and back here I've changed a lot. I shot with Canon for years, and now the shot with Nikon. Does it really make that much of a difference? Not really, as far as color and detail and things like that. But I mean, things like dynamic range, it makes a huge difference. There's a huge difference. And so this was shot with the Nikon D810 with a 12-24. I'm a wide angle addict. And so I was literally like maybe 6 inches from this first front flower. And I think I focus stacked this. I do a lot of focus stacking, especially if I'm right in front if the subject is like right in front of my lens. I'll typically set it around f11, and because that's usually your sharpest aperture, and then I'll focus stack, usually about 3 is what it takes. And you'll get, and I blend those together in Photoshop. And then I bracket for the background for the sky, and then I take the blended image and the sky image and then put them together, and theoretically they should merge perfectly if you focus stacked it. And so that's typically my technique for that. Here's some other programs that I use. This is I've tried twice now to shoot the Cahaba lilies at night. And the first time I did it, it was okay. I didn't really have good weather conditions, but in May 21st, that was the day. It was perfectly clear. The lilies were in peak bloom, and I had this plan that I was going to shoot the Cahaba lilies, and I wanted to do it different than a lot of people. A lot of people take great images with light painting the Cahaba lilies, but in my opinion, I think they look unnatural. And so my goal here was to try to shoot a natural looking image as much as I could with the Milky Way in it. And if you think, on a full moon night, these lilies are so white and so thick. On a full moon night at a pretty fairly high ISO, you could probably get a scene like this, okay? Now, you wouldn't get the Milky Way in it, but you would get a scene like this with the foreground. So this is the image that I was going for. I only took just a few images. So that's the thing, whenever you have this, whereas if you're doing light painting, you can get all kinds of cool compositions, but when you do what I did here, you got like one shot. You got to get it right. And I got it right this time. I was pretty happy with that. But so this is how I use this, how I would do a shot like this. First of all, I use photographer's ephemeris, just like I would before, but what I did was with photographer's ephemeris, and really you don't even have to use that. I just use Google Maps or Google Earth. But I looked at where the Cahaba lilies were going to be, and you can see that the Hargrove Shoals is almost running south. South to just a little bit south-southwest. And so that gave me an idea of where I would need to look for I wanted to know, okay, when does the Milky Way actually line up with that? Is it going to line up with those flowers? So what I use is a program called Stellarium. I know there's other programs out there, but it works really well and it's pretty easy to use. So I'm going to show you how I use Stellarium to predict the Milky Way, where it's going to line up, and then I'll take you through my technique of what I did very quickly. I got to talk a lot faster, I'm sorry. But So what you do is you go over here and you click the day that you're going to be there. So this was taken May 21st. And so I set it for May 21st. And then what you do is you just click the time frame. Okay, and I took this about 1 o'clock in the morning, but it's south, right? So I got to make sure I turn this around. And so I can get a ballpark idea what it's going to look like, and I can kind of imagine my Cahaba lilies here in the foreground, what it's going to look like at a particular time. So here it's at 11 o'clock. So at 11 o'clock, it's over here. But at 11 o'clock on the Cahaba, there's cliffs and stuff. So it really was covered. The Milky Way was covered until about 1 o'clock. I think it was around 1:30 I took my shot. And so let's take a look at the picture. And you can see that's exactly how it lined up. So again, this is making the best predictions you can get before you get to the place. So we have this powerful information like this. So why not use it? And so what I did was, to make this shot, I knew when the Milky Way was going to be there. So I got there around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I walked around for about an hour in the river, in the middle of the river, and it's very slippery, by the way, and to find the best arrangement that I could find. And this is the one that I found. And so, and of course, I had to do it at night. I mean, I had something to do the next day, so I had to do it at night. And I couldn't wait. And of course, this was the best time to do it. You had to do it here. If I wanted to get the galactic center, I had to do it at night. So these just happen. You can see how some are just withered right here, but most of them are looking pretty good. So what I did was I got there about 5 o'clock, scouted it, and then I waited till the blue hour, just before it was dark, where it's just pitch black, and I shot focus stacked images all the way through. I think it was on 3 or 4 images. And then I left my camera out in the river for hours, which was just plain stressful. Left it out in the middle of the river for hours. And I waited for the Milky Way to come up, and then I shot the Milky Way. And then I went back home and I put them together. I tried to down the brightness of the scene to where I could get the Milky Way and the Cahaba lilies just kind of balanced. And so hopefully it looks pretty good. I think people liked it on Facebook. I got a pretty good following on Facebook and Instagram. So people, I think, liked it. And I'm very happy with it. It turned out pretty good. I wish the graininess wasn't as much, but you know what? Most your and night photography shots don't have a lot of graininess anyways. So that's a lot of the programs that I use. I'm going to mention about something else in a few minutes as well. So I'm going to move on now. And now that you've seen my basic methodology, then I'm going to show you how I've applied that basic methodology. Okay. Oh, here's another one. I forgot about this one. Many of you hopefully got to see the Neowise comet. And, you know, I know there's so many much better pictures, like Mads Peterson had this incredible shot. But, you know, I just didn't have the time nor I just didn't have anything to access where I would get a super cool shot. So I tried my best to get a cool shot. And so this was taken literally about 15 minutes from my house. And I didn't realize we could get such good sky quality about 15 minutes from Hartselle, Alabama, but we did. I found these trees, and I'm just always driving around trying to find cool compositions. And I found these trees about a week before I ever learned about the comet, probably a couple weeks before. And I found this group of trees that really is great place for sunset. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try to shoot these trees with the comet over it. So what I did is I used a little bit of more advanced method with photographer's ephemeris, and I'll show you how I did it in just a minute. But the problem with the comet is you had to figure out, okay, it's usually on a particular day, it was either like one degree above the horizon, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, and eventually at this particular night, it was 10 degrees above the horizon. So I knew I wanted these trees, and I wanted this nice little small mountain or hill, we might say. It wasn't a mountain, but had this hill in the background, and then I wanted the comet above it. And so I had to know if this was all going to happen right. So the first thing I did, the first issue is I did not want the comet behind the hill. So what I did was, is I got on Photographer's Ephemeris, and there's a setting. What you can do is you set the pin where you are, and then you set the pin, and also Photopills does this too. And you set the pin where you want to know where that object you're trying to shoot. You set it at the highest point here. Okay, and it tells you the degrees on the horizon. So this was 1.4 degrees above the horizon. So I knew that the comet was going to be well above this mountain. So I knew that I didn't know how far it was going to be until I used another app. So I knew I was safe as far as getting in the trees in the picture with the mountain, and the comet was the question of, okay, is the comet going to line up with the mountain? And so I used a program called Go Skywatch. It's a phone app, and it actually had NeoWise programmed into it. So I went earlier on in the evening on this particular day and checked to see where that comet was going to be and to see if it was actually going to line up on the mountain, and it did. And so it was all going to come together, and there was like a window of time of like 20 minutes where this thing was going to be available. And the problem is that I wanted a sharp image in the foreground, and I wanted a sharp image in the background, and to get this all exposed correctly to make it look halfway, normal. And so I had to use some pretty kind of weird techniques with this that I never had done before. First of all, I got there around 8 o'clock, right at sunset, and I set up my camera with my 80 to 400 millimeter lens, and I focused on these trees because they were pretty far away, and I focused on these trees and got it, and I focus stacked it. I focus stacked it all the way through so I would get a sharp image all the way through, because the stars would not be sharp if I did not focus stack it all the way through. Okay, because I would not be able to focus on the stars with an 80 to 400 millimeter lens at night. And so what I did was I took those focus stacked images, and then I put a mark on the ground. I had to go take my friend, I had to go meet a friend. So I had to leave. I would have liked to stay there the whole time, but also this was like, I didn't know if I was shooting near private property. So I didn't want to stay there the whole time for like 2 hours long. So I just left. And I left a mark where I marked where my tripod feet would be. And then I also tried to be very careful, took my camera off so I did not bump it. I already focused it into infinity so I could get the stars. And I set it in my car and tried to make sure that I didn't lose focus. So when I put my camera back on the tripod, everything would just kind of line up perfectly, and it did. Now, the only problem that I don't like about this image, I probably already see that, is that these stars are not pin sharp, but I still like it. And the reason for that is just because I'm just an amateur at shooting star photography, and I'd forgotten about the fact that normally I'm shooting stars with a 12 to 24 lens. I'm shooting with and then you would set it at like 20 seconds. Well, you can't do that with a long lens. I mean, you've got to say, it's going to take a lot longer to shoot the picture. So it actually gave a little star track on it. So anyways. So that's a little bit about that image. But that was a well-planned image. I tried to do a lot of planning with that. Okay, so let me move on. And I'm going to talk a little bit faster now as we go through the different things. But I took a recent trip up to North Carolina and to go do some fall photography. I have not been to the mountains in a long time. And I was really dying to go, but I wanted to go somewhere different instead of on the Gatlinburg side. I wanted to go to the North Carolina side. And I had all this planned. I had it a month ahead of time reserved, and the campsite reserved, and then the hurricane came. And I was like, man, I mean, it was just storming, from that Saturday to Sunday, it was just pouring down rain. So, and then I called the place up there and I said, okay, are the fall colors, because I knew I was kind of early, are the fall colors going to be there? And they said, they're kind of okay up in the highest elevation. I was like, well, man, I don't want to spend all this money to go up there and not get the colors that I want. So I canceled my reservation. And then later on, I was like, as I got closer, I mean, literally a couple of days before time, I was like, and I started seeing people's pictures. I was like, because I knew the weather looked good for the Monday. It looked like it's going to be good because it's going to be like 60% chance of sky cover. It had stormed for 2 days straight. Usually after a major storm like a hurricane, you're going to have some cool light. And then, so I was like, I told my wife, I'm going to go. So I got in my car, and on Sunday night, I left around 10 o'clock, and I drove up to North Carolina all through the night, and my alternator broke down on me. My car broke down on me, so I had to get it fixed that Monday morning in Cleveland, Tennessee. The guy was so helpful. And I got there about 12 o'clock that afternoon. So I had an afternoon and an evening to shoot, and then I had the next day to shoot. But the best light was going to be that evening. And so I went around, and you can just see this was just during the day. This was like probably 2 o'clock. It was just, the light was just incredible, just absolutely incredible. The colors were incredible. And so I shot this with my my 80 to 400 lens, just to have that power, to have that length, that focal length. You can do such cool artistic compositions with that. And so I just got all kinds of great images that day, going around to different overlooks. I'd already scouted before I ever did this. Again, I had already planned, I'd already researched it, where the best overlooks were. I'd used photographers' ephemeris to find where the sunset was going to be. And so I knew the best overlook was going to be Woollyback. And because it sits high in elevation, it was facing sunset perfectly. And so I just, my whole day revolved around Woollyback, because I knew that that's where I wanted to be for sunset. But I went to other overlooks too. And so this was taken at Woollyback earlier on. Okay. And then as I continued to go to other overlooks, I just came across this waterfall. I was driving along, and then I was driving along, and I got out at this particular place, and I heard this waterfall, and I was like, okay, wow, there's a waterfall down there. I saw a sign for it. It's called Woodfin Falls. So I decided to go down there, and it was already getting about 5 o'clock. So the light was getting lower. So I thought, well, I'll go shoot this because I can. And so I did that, and I used my 12 to 24 millimeter lens and focus stacked this. Of course, the light was perfect. I had some light coming over the waterfall there, and it just made everything glow. Of course, I threw some Orton effect on here, but I focus stacked this, and I mean, literally, my lens was probably no more than probably 6 inches from this fern, and it was a very awkward position, but I was able to get it and get the shot, and I really like the shot. I don't know how you feel about it, but I like it. I remember what John Shaw said one time. John Shaw is a phenomenal photographer, old photographer, and he said, I shoot for myself, and I hope that people like it, but I shoot for myself, and that's what I do too. I'm not shooting to impress people. I just shoot because I like what I do, and but in hopes that people do like it though. All right. Later on, I went back to Woollyback again, and as this was approaching sunset, this was probably getting around 5:30. Sunset was at 7 up in the mountains. And the light was just spectacular. I mean, the clouds were starting to clear out just enough to where this beautiful light was coming through and highlighting all these hilltops, and it would fog up and then it'd go away, and it'd fog up and go away. And then, and I posted this one recently, it is now my most popular picture. And again, this was well planned. I mean, I knew this was going to be, we would get good light here. There was a good chance, at least. Well, later on, the sun started to break the line here on the horizon, started to break the clouds, and this is what happened. It just started highlighting these hilltops. And so I used a long lens, of course, to zoom up on this. I think it may have been like 310 millimeters or so. And to capture photographic, being this graphic nature with beautiful light. And I just shot and shot. I have not even processed all my images from this particular scene. And but this was one of my favorites because I really like the photographic quality of this. The light quality is awesome. It's just, the atmosphere is incredible, and the depth of field and all these mountains, you can just see them rolling through the depth. That's what I loved about Woollyback, was just these things just seem to go on forever. And so I really liked it. So I used Google Maps with the little, you put the little orange guy on there, and it actually gives you the street view. So I could see what Woollyback looked like before I even got there. And I did that. I looked at each overlook in my area that I knew I was going to be in and looked at it. That's another powerful thing, is using the street view. And that really helps a lot to know what that area is, especially if you're just going to be doing overlook shooting. So moving on. And then after the actual beautiful sunset, then all the clouds went away. And then you had the sunset, the actual sunset. And I had this 80 to 400 millimeter lens that I could zoom up. This is exactly what I was wanting to get. I wanted to get these rolling hills that just seemed to go on forever. And then I got this big sun. I've never captured a picture like that where the sun was so big. And that was all because of the focal length that I used. And I mean, this was shot way far away. And so just good technique and just patience and prediction. And I ended up just getting so many images just on this particular day. So, and then the next morning, and here's another thing, I have a plan. I have a plan as far as light, and, you know, like in my workshops that I do, I have a plan. Like, I know if it's going to be good light, I'm going to be up in the mountains or whatever. But if it's not going to be, like I said, the sky cover's not going to be good, I'm not going to waste my time being up on the mountains. I'm going to be down in the canyon shooting waterfalls. I mean, you can do that in the Smokies. And so there's so many opportunities, so many different places you can go. And so if it's not going to be good, you know it's not going to be good there because of sky cover, then I'm going to be shooting waterfalls. And I really was dying to shoot Mingo Falls. And it was just perfect because this was rain from the hurricane. It had filled up Mingo Falls. I just love how this waterfall falls. It's just beautiful. And the fall colors were nice. And so I got there. I was walking in the dark up there. And I got there just when the light was right and got the scene. I shot this with my 12 to 24 lens. I love that lens. My Sigma 12 to 20, my Sigma 12 to 24 f4 lens is just absolutely incredible. And just the detail on it is just incredible. And so good technique, and also just the equipment, it just produced a great image of. Now, one thing I did do, I don't like the frothiness. I think like a lot of photographers, I've gotten away from a lot of the frothiness in the water. So I shot this at f16, and then I shot it at f4.5, and that gave me like a shutter speed of a fourth of a second. And then I painted that shutter speed in so that it would give this nice texture to the water. All right, another thing that I did, I took this trip a couple of years ago during the summer to the East Coast of the US, the Atlantic coast. And it's just a phenomenal place if you ever get to go. My goal was to go to Cumberland Island. I love live oaks. I wanted to get some live oaks with Spanish moss, and I'm telling you, there's no prettier place than, I could be wrong, than Cumberland Island. It's absolutely incredible. It's run by the National Park Service. You have to take a ferry out to it, and it's limited. So, I mean, literally you have this island almost to yourself. There's it's like 7 miles long, and you can only have maybe 60 to 70 people on that island all day long. So you are by yourself for the most part on this spectacular island. And so this was taken at the peak light hour around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And another thing is the last ferry leaves around 4 o'clock. So if you're going to get good light there, you're going to have to camp. And that's what I did. My oldest daughter and I camped. And so we camped on primitive camps, camped right near the beach. It was just awesome. And except for the raccoons. And, but I got so many cool images of Cumberland Island. This was one of my favorite ones. This was just a service road. And I focus stacked it with this was shot with a 28 to 300 millimeter lens, around 80 something millimeter. And I focus stacked it to get the depth of field, and I bracketed it, of course, and combined them together for using luminosity mask. Here's one of my first really cool images I took. I took the other one later on, but I really like this image too. 28. This is what I was going for. I wanted to get the Spanish moss. I wanted to get some cool arrangement and composition of these gnarly trees. And I just love the gnarly trees, just these, because of the conditions that these live oaks are in. This was taken at the beach. When I took this picture, my daughter and I were the only people on the beach. We were the only people on the beach for miles. And so I caught a nice sunset. I didn't plan the sunset. I wanted to shoot live oaks, but the sunset just happened to work. And this, of course, these are morning glories. But this was shot at nights, in the evening, so the morning glories weren't out. It'd been nice if they were out, but it wasn't. But it's still a pretty image, and I really like it. Another thing, I'm talking, you just tell me when to stop, okay?
No, please keep going. I think for me, the biggest thing that I'm getting from your presentation is that I don't plan. And
Yes.
so when I go and I try to come back with something amazing, I'm disappointed because I don't do the planning, and I just show up and whatever is there, that's what I get. So I think that's the biggest takeaway so far from you.
Well, just tell me to shut up whenever I need to, okay?
No, I'm good. Continue.
Well, other people may not be, so I don't know. Y'all just do whatever. So one more thing I want to show y'all that I do, because I know a lot of us visit coastal areas. And one of the things you have to take into account is our tides, okay? And you can even be predictive with this. This is one of my favorite images. Not really, just kidding. But this was taken at Andrews Beach on the west side of Jekyll Island. I did shoot Driftwood Beach in the evening. Never do that because there's people everywhere. Do it in the morning. It's a sunrise location. But Andrews Beach is the sunset location, okay? And so you can see here right now, I already looked on Google Maps, Google Earth, and tried to find a cool tree that was sitting out in the water, but at Andrews Beach, but I still needed to be there in person. So in the middle of the day, we just kind of were enjoying the beach and everything, walking along. And so I was just scouting and came across, and these are the trees I wanted to see what they were like. And sure enough, they were really cool trees. But what I wanted from this image is I wanted sunset, and I wanted the tide coming in. I didn't want it sitting on the sand like this, because I don't think having the water, the action of the water in the image makes it a whole lot stronger image, okay? So I planned, just like I was explained, I planned to figure out when sunset was and when the tide was. And I had a window of several days that I could do this. So I'd used two things to figure out, and this is what the picture I got, okay? Let me just show you. Look at the vast difference between the situation. It's the same place, just different conditions, right? The only thing that annoys me about it is this sign right here. So a big sign that says, no pets past this point. And why on earth they would do that on that beautiful tree, I do not know. And I even fussed at this guy because he was part of the Jekyll Island recreation place or whatever. I said, that is just tacky. I said, you need to take that off and put it somewhere else. But anyways, but it's just an eyesore, and you can't Photoshop it out. It's very hard to Photoshop it out. So anyway, so it just became part of my composition. But I wanted this so that the water was right and the sun was right, and it all came together, and I wanted good light too. So this was kind of a complicated image, but I want to show you how I did that, okay? So the first thing I did is I looked up when sunset was going to be, and I found that the sunset was going to be best on this particular day at 8:21 p.m., okay? And so I knew my sunset, and I had already positioned this where those trees were going to be. Let me just show you here. I mean, literally you can put this, I mean, look, that's exactly where the sun is coming up under that tree, okay? And so I've put that little line, that sunset up. I knew exactly where I needed to be. The only other problem was, could I get the tide in the picture at the same time as the sunset? So the way to do that is you go to NOAA's tides. I use NOAA for everything, okay, as far as that. And I've already got it linked here. What you do is, it's cool if you go to the homepage. I tell you what, I'm gonna go back just a little bit. If you go to the homepage, let's see if this is gonna do it. They show you all the different stations where they measure the tides. So this particular station is right here. No, it's not. That's Cumberland Island. It's Jekyll Island's north of that. It's not, my station's not showing up for some reason on here, but I'm gonna click off and click back on. But you click on the pin and it takes you to a site like this, okay? And what you do is you put your window of time in when you're gonna be there. Say if I've got 5 days that I could actually try to time it where I could get the sunset and the tide the way I want it, okay? So I put in July 29th, 2019 to August 3rd, 2019. And then what I knew my sunset time, so it was what, it was 8:40 something. And so you go along, and so this would be high tide, this would be low tide, high tide, low tide. And so you can see this is PM, AM, and so you can kind of gauge the time. As you go along here, it tells you the time. And so as I go along, I'm at 9:41 AM, then the low tide here is 4:04 PM, then it's going to go to high tide. High tide here on this particular day was 10:12 PM. So that means that between 12 PM and 10:12 PM, that means the tide would be coming in. So I knew that this was my best bet to get the tide coming in underneath those trees on that particular day. So I set August 1st as my day to shoot. And then I studied the weather. Now, I wouldn't have went and shot it if I didn't know the weather was, I don't know, I still may have done it just because I wanted a cool picture. But so that's what happened. And so what we're looking at here is the tide is actually coming in. When I went out there, when I first got out there, the tide was probably about knee deep, and the water was about knee deep. By the time I was done and taking this picture, it was probably up to my waist. So I was snapping like crazy, praying a shark wasn't gonna bite me, you know, in the dark. And so I got out of there because it just got to where it was, I mean, the tidal change. Another thing that's really important for this is it tells you the tidal difference. So the tide was going to change a matter of 6 feet in 6 hours. So you have to be very careful. You know, certain areas around the world, you have to be very careful about the tides. But this is a way where you can time it to where you get the tide and whatever it is at the exact same time at the right conditions with the sunset or sunrise. You can use that methodology, okay? So along the way, this is the same evening. This is the other tree that has the sign. The sign was right here. And I used this, this little stump, this little branch here to hide the sign. But I shot this with a 10-stop neutral density filter so that I could blur the water, because I wish I could have done that with my with this picture, but I shot with my 12-24, and I don't have a big wide filter holder for my like a long neutral density filter. So I just had to go with what I got. It would have been cooler if I could have blurred the water, but hey, it's still a cool image. I like it at least, and that's all that matters, right? Okay, in that same trip, I planned on visiting Wormslow Plantation. I wanted to go in there originally. I didn't get there until evening. It was pouring down rain that day. And I got there that evening and they were about to close. And I was like, there were people, cars going up and down the street. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. So I waited till after dark, after it closed. And then I shot through the fence and got this image. Everybody had left, so these poor deer, they were tired of these people being there, so they came out. This was actually a buck, and it came out just at the right time. This required a very long lens. I shot this with my 28-300. I didn't have the 80-400 at the time. They have put a sign right in the middle of the road where you have to shoot past the sign. And if you don't have a long lens, a super long lens, you can't shoot past the sign. But if you do, you can shoot past the sign and you can get this composition after they close, and you get no cars in the scene, no people, no cars. And that's when all the wildlife comes out and you can get cool shots like this. I just got lucky. You know, I was glad just to get the trees and the detail and the leaves and the light, but then I got this deer that just hopped out in the middle of the road. I got very lucky on that. So, you know, photography is a lot of it is planned, but also you just have a lot of luck there too. One of the places I definitely had on my list to visit was the angel oak tree. If you have not seen the angel oak tree, you need to put it on your list. It is absolutely amazing. These trees, the limbs on this thing are as big as trees around here where I live. I mean, it is massive. And I mean, they're so big that they have to have poles to help prop it up. I did clone out a few poles. I will also say this, these people who run this place, they're just kind of jerks because they put signs all around this tree. And they also have banned people from using tripods. You can't use a tripod there. And it's just annoying. But what I did was I shot this at ISO 1000 with my 12 to 24 lens at f8, and I was able to handhold this and just, I shot it as fast as I could get it. And I tried to get, as people, and there were people everywhere. So I just kind of shot quite a few shots hand holding it and, and clone the people out by, position. They just so happened to move around where I could paint them out with each frame. And then, of course, I painted out all the ugly signs and the markers and all that they put around this tree. But, I mean, you've got to see the angel oak. It is just absolutely incredible. It was so worth it. But it's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. And it's just out in the middle of nowhere on John's Island. So that's a little bit about that. I want to talk, and I'm going to have to go really fast here. I want to talk about local shooting. Okay, all these places so far, for the most part, are places where I've had a journey to go to places. Okay, but I have plenty of local spots that I have scouted where I know if I have all my conditions that I'm looking for, that I am there if I know that I'm going to have good light. For example, there's a swamp, of Tupelo swamp, that's about 20 to 25 minutes from my house called the Beaver Dam Boardwalk. And I have taken so many images, and this is you can tell this is an old image. I mean, I shot this years ago, and this is the kind of light you just get in there. When you're when you got those chances of 100% humidity and about 10% chance of sky cover, that means the sun's not going to be blocked, and you're going to get these beams. When the dew point and the temperature are just right together, you get these beams, these beautiful beams. And I've taken that several times, and you just can't not take a good picture there when you've got those kind of conditions. Here's one later on. And around that area, I already have planned around that area, have other places. Like when I'll go to that Tupelo swamp. Let's see, I shot this place early in the morning, right when the sun came up. Of course, I didn't have great light as far as clouds are concerned, but I was more interested in the Tupelo swamp anyways. But during the summer, these beautiful goldenrods, and they're just kind of sneezeweed, but they just cover Wheeler Wildlife Refuge in this particular spot where I go. And so I went and shot sunrise at this spot, which just was beautiful as far as the light. And then within about a 5-minute drive, I was in my Tupelo swamp to capture this. So I have all kinds of locations planned out. And if I have good light, I'm going to go to all those locations. And so here I caught this Tupelo swamp, and it's really neat that, being a photographer, I was reading, one of my favorite photographers for years was Mark Adamus. And I still like his stuff. But I was reading one of his quotes he did the other day, and he said, one of the reasons why we photograph is to capture things that might not be there later on. Well, I cannot tell you how many times I've taken pictures of places that are not there anymore. And this particular tree is just perfect. This tree with this island is perfect. Well, guess what? It's no longer there. It has fallen over. It's gone. And now I'll never be able to get this composition again. And that was the best composition in the swamp, was right there. I mean, it was just a perfect place. And I would always get the sun right behind the tree, and it was just perfect. And again, this was a planned shot. Just about another mile or two around there, I've got another road where it faces sunrise. And so when that sun comes up, then the light is going to come through. And if it's foggy, you're going to get these beams. I shot this with a 70 to 200 on the road. I've taken all kinds of pictures on this little road. And one of my favorite photographers is Lars van der Goor. I don't know if you've seen his stuff before, but he just does the most absolutely stunning forest photography. And this just kind of reminded me, it's nothing of his quality, but it's the kind of scene you're looking for. You've got to scout out these scenes, and you just got to be there when the light is there. And if you could predict the light, then you can get the scenes that you want. And in the same area, this is again around Mooresville, where I live, near where I live. Like I said, about 20 to 25 minutes away. on this particular morning, I got so many cool shots. Again, I predicted it. It was kind of one of those iffy situations where it's almost too much sky cover, but it just all came together. And this was actually an HDR shot. I don't usually shoot HDR, but I use Pro Photo HDR sometimes in Photoshop if I can't process it. But it's just a nightmare to process. I'll try it out, and it did a really good job with this. It makes it really natural. And what's neat about it, what I tell my participants a whole lot in my workshops is always look behind you, always, when you got some beautiful light, because this was one scene. You step behind you, look behind you, this was another scene at the exact same time. And so I got like really cool images. And again, this was just from predicting, just trying to predict light. In the same area, literally the same area, there's these silos that I have driven past many, many times. I've always said, man, this would be a great location if I just had the right light. Well, it came to be one day, and it was like, it was going to be 60 to 70% chance of sky cover. We had just had major storms. I mean, just major flooding. And I knew there was, usually after those kind of conditions, you're going to have incredible light. And so I was there at the silos, and that is what I got. This was with the 28 to 300, around 50 to 60 millimeter. I remember exactly what it was. And then I put my wide angle lens on, and that's what I got. And so this was shot at 12 millimeter. And this is so detailed that you can actually see the little water droplets on the grass with these silos with the beautiful sunrise. And it just, and again, this is locally. This is within 25 minutes. And this is in Alabama, people. This is not having to drive far away. And so like I said, I talked to my participants about that. It's good if you have the money to be able to travel, but I don't have the money to be able to travel everywhere. I wish I did, but I don't. And so I've got to be selective about what I do, and I got to be purposeful about what I do. And I've come away with some pretty good images. But like I said, I'm happy with them. This is that same swamp. Just take it in the fall. I won Outdoor Alabama contest with at least, I think this one got third or second place in this particular scene. And this was that same Tupelo swamp. Just again, foggy morning. The light came up, and the trees colors were just right, and I just captured this nice light in this Tupelo swamp. The same situation. I mean, I took so many cool images just because I was there at the right place at the right time and predicted the light, and it turned out the way it was. So I call this my dancing trees. It kind of looks like they're dancing. And this is something like I said, Lars van der Goor would capture, but his is like 20 billion times better than mine. But I was pretty proud of that because I was at least pushing to his level. Another one, same thing, predicted fog. I went to Mooresville, right around same area, and I shot the sunrise. It was okay. It's kind of pretty. It's okay. But then I started driving down the roads. There's this dirt road that goes right along Limestone Bay, and it has all kinds of curves and stuff. And so as that sun came up, it had rained the night before. This was during the summer. If you get a good hard rain and then you have like 10% chance of sky cover the next day, you're going to have pretty good fog. Okay. And so I just drove down this road, and I just shot beautiful light beams all morning, and got all kinds of cool compositions. And so anyways, another place right across from Decatur, just about 25 minutes from where I live, there's these beautiful little, they're called tickweeds. They're a type of sunflower, and they just cover Wheeler Wildlife Refuge. And so again, I scouted the weather, and then I knew these flowers were blooming, and I just went out and shot the flowers. And so it gave me the flowers and the beautiful sky with it. And they're published images. Here's another place called Vinemont that's near where I live. Just again, being selective about your planning, and then also pre-visualizing your places, scouting them out, and just being there when you know that light is going to be there is very helpful. And like I said, I could just talk all night about this kind of thing and show you images, but I would be happy to take questions. I've got plenty of other things to show, but I'll be happy to take questions if you want to at this point.
Does anybody have any questions? Marilyn has been commenting and just talking about how wonderful your photos are and the locations. And one thing that I have learned from Marilyn is to always look behind you
Yes.
instead of looking straight forward. I kind of forge my way forward, like I guess it's Black Friday at Walmart or something.
Yeah.
But and Marilyn always steps back and she turns around and she looks, and those are some of her most stunning images as well. And I think for me, one of the words that you used that I hope that I take from this and going forward is to be more purposeful in what I'm doing, and more planning, so that I guess it in my photography, when I do walk away and it's like these are so bland and so and it kind of is disheartening in a way. And so I think I can use your tips to kind of maybe plan a little bit better, and probably take in my surroundings more. Like we have the Cobb River in Trustful that is pretty nice. We don't have any lilies, but there's some beautiful areas. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to take your advice and be more purposeful and try and find places with a short distance.
And another thing is just waiting for the light. I have seen many cases over the years when I've been shooting where just people just getting impatient and not waiting for the light. I'm gonna quickly fast forward through here. Like I said, I've got all kinds of stuff I could show, but I want to show you one particular image that just stands out in my mind about that kind of thing. Right here. Okay, I have never seen so many photographers in my life. This is at Foothills Parkway in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I got here this particular morning. I've shot Foothills several times. And on this morning, there was literally 75 photographers all lined up. And the fog, it was just fogged in like crazy. But I knew that fog eventually was going to lift. There was going to be about 10% chance of sky cover after that. And there was going to be some amazing light. And so, I mean, I got there like 4:30 in the morning, and by around, I mean, it was still going from till 9:30 probably in the morning. And all of these people just started leaving. And I mean, literally all of them. And there was probably maybe 6 people left at the time when that happened.
Wow.
So that's another thing, takeaway is being patient and just waiting on the light. Because if you've planned and you know there's going to be good light and you have great conditions and possibilities, 9 times out of 10, something is going to happen. And so this is one of my favorite images, just because, I mean, the light is incredible, and just because I waited, We
do have a couple of questions or comments. Pat says it's frustrating for her because she goes to the locations by herself and she gets lost. And then she says she's not as scientific as you are. So understanding the data is, maybe complex. So
I mean, that's true of me. I mean, there's so many guys and girls that are so far above me in Photoshop. I feel like, I'm not that old, but I mean, I hope not. I don't know if I'm getting close up there, but, I feel so mediocre compared to so many people on Photoshop. I mean, it's just, so don't feel bad about that.
Right. And that brings us to the question that Linda has. She wanted to know, how much post-processing do you do on the imaging?
Well, it depends upon the image, but I will say this: I do not add skies. I will remove something if I could physically remove it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like if I've got a stick out in the scene, then I'll remove it and I could have picked that stick up and I just forgot and missed it. Because I call that photoshopping the scene. When I go out there and get my sticks out and clear it all out to where I have a nice, get all my distractions out of the way. But sometimes you miss one. And so if I've got a stick in the scene and I pick that stick up, I Photoshop it out of the scene, I don't feel bad about that, because I could have done anything that I could have done in the scene, then I don't have a problem with in Photoshop. But again, we get into the whole argument of art and all that. But when you see my skies and you see my foregrounds and all that, it's all real as far as it was at least taken at the time at around the same time. It was not on a completely different day, you know, or a complete adding things that weren't there, you know.
What is your minimum and maximum images that you stack? I mean, you said maybe 3 or 4.
Typically, I just would do, if I'm shooting at f11 with any lens, most of the time f11 will usually get you maybe 3 to 4 images. It depends on the depth of the image.
Okay. And Linda wants to know, what do you use for your post processing?
I use, of course, Photoshop. I don't use Lightroom. I use Adobe Bridge and Camera Raw just because it doesn't eat up as much memory. I use Nix software, the old Nix software, and I don't pay for the new one. There's still a link out there for the old Nix software that's free that Google had for a time. So I use that Nix software, and every now and then I may use Topaz Adjust, I think that's what it is. But mainly my filters come from Nix software. And also the big thing I use all the time is TK's action panel, Tony Kuiper's action panel, luminosity panel.
Okay, I haven't heard of that, so I'll have to look that up.
Yes, and it's very cheap. I mean, it's probably some of the best money you can spend in photography. Well, I don't know that I have time to show it, but I mean, if I had time, y'all want me to show it, I will. If people want me to, I will. But
but
basically,
we invite you back for a part 2?
Sure, whatever you want, I'd be happy to do that.
That would be perfect, because this is some great information, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to be able to get all of the presentation as well. So
Yes.
Maybe we can come back for a part 2. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely.
Sounds perfect. Does anybody else have any questions? Marilyn?
I just want to say thank you so much.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate you asking me. It's quite an honor.
I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to mention your tree, the angel tree, if you want to get one that's similar, not quite as fantastic, but very similar, in Alabama at Blakely State Park, down at Spanish Fort, there is a ginormous tree that is very, very similar, has all the long branches.
Is that the one that's in the park with the parking lot all around it?
No. You're thinking of at Gulf Shores.
Road.
But I'm talking about it's near Spanish Fort. It's near the Mobile Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the historic state park, Blakely. And yes, okay. And they have there is a big, huge tree that's very similar, not quite as spectacular, but it's in Alabama. So,
oh yeah, I'd rather have that in Alabama anyways. Well, thank you so much for that. I will definitely shoot it when I'm down there in that area.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Blakely State Park. I might have to email you and ask you that again.
Oh yes, no problem.
And you are welcome to join our page. You don't have to be a member of the club to be on our page. And like I mentioned today, we're always looking for contributors and folks that are willing to help others in their photography journey. Because we have beginners as well as the more experienced level photographers as well. So you're welcome to join us and, see if, you might want to share sometime. But I appreciate you coming, and Linda, I appreciate you sitting in as well. And y'all be sure to check out Linda's YouTube or Zoom meetings on Wednesday nights. And we could probably post a link to those, Linda, on our site. And Keith, I really do appreciate you joining us, and especially with all the snafus that I have had over the last week trying to get this going. So
hey, no problem. I just appreciate you asking me.
Well, I'm a big fan of your work, and I love knowing learning a little bit more about your images and that sort of thing. So
feel free to email me anytime if you have a question or whatever, but I'll be happy to help you out. I'm a teacher at heart. I love to help out people. I mean, that's really what I do. I shoot now mainly just to draw people to my workshops. And, of course, we've kind of been, can't do that very much lately. So
Yeah, the
kind
workshop.
of put a hold on that.
Well, if you'd like to send, post some more information about that, that would be great. I know that Steve has enjoyed your one-on-one workshops as well.
Yeah, I do one-on-one workshops. So, I am available. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, feel welcome to do that. Hey, Mike.
I was just wondering, what was that TK software? I didn't catch
It's
that.
called TK Actions. It's a luminosity panel, but it has all kinds of things in it. It has the luminosity functions. There's all kinds of panels out there. But TK, Tony Kuiper was the first person to develop a luminosity panel, and people have kind of gone off on it, just kind of built other panels, but his is the original. People say it's complicated. I don't know. I don't know any different. I mean, I use it and it's incredible. And it has other kinds of functions. It has all kinds of functions on it, not just the luminosity, but like resizing for the web or Orton effect or just all kinds of cool stuff, just powerful software.
Well, thank you very much on that, because people tend to just jump to the big name processing, like Adobe and that sort of thing. So it helps when you learn something.
Well, it works with Adobe now. It's a Photoshop. It's a Photoshop plugin.
Okay.
The panel is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll look into
Thank
that.
you so much, Keith.
Hey, no problem.
We're gonna find Pat
Nice
out
to
in the
see you.
woods.
Right.
Somewhere looking at her phone for the scientific data. So, but anyway, but thank you guys for joining us tonight. And I learned something. I can't wait to get out there and shoot. So
Well, that's what I want. I want people to learn something. I don't think I'm, intelligent or anything, but I hope that maybe there's something I've come across that people haven't come across. So.
well, we've all experienced the Cahaba lilies, and we all have nightmare stories.
Yeah.
Mine is my 100 millimeter macro lens within the bottom. Yeah. So anyway, we all have a story to tell about those little lilies.
But it's worth it when you get a good shot.
Well, I got to plan better. So see, maybe next time. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all.
Okay.
soon,
You all have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank y'all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.